We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Vav Amud Beis in Meseches Nedarim. This is Nedarim Daf 46b. The Gemara continues that Rabbah said that Zeiri said, Machlokes sheyesh ba kedei chalukah. The machlokes in the Mishnah between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is a situation where you have partners, they're muder hana from one another, they cannot benefit from one another, and we're talking about a property which in theory it can be divided up. The Rosh over here explains, Machlokes sheyesh ba kedei chalukah, dalid amos l'chol. In other words, it's a property, a chotzer that's large enough that in theory you can give dalad amos to each one. Kevon de efsher bechaluka. So since it is possible in theory to divide up this courtyard, so lo samchina na breira, we don't rely on breira. Aval ein ba kedei chalukah. But let's say it's a property that's so small that they could never divide it up. Meaning really the partners all along were going to use this property and share it together and essentially rely on breira. So in that case, divrei hakol mutter. So in that case, everybody agrees it's mutter. We can certainly rely on breira in that case. Everyone agrees they can enter into the chotzer, even the Tanna Kama. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef said back to him, Hare Beis HaKnesses, well, what about a shul? Techamisha ein bo kedei chalukah dami. That also is something which really cannot be divided. It's essentially a public property that belongs to everybody in the particular town. Utanana, we learned in the Mishnah, Shnei and Asurin bedover shalo soyer. It says that they're both usur. Again, let's say a similar case. Two people are prohibited from getting benefit from one another, so they're both prohibited from something like a shul that belongs to the city, because it's considered like you are deriving benefit from the person you're not supposed to derive benefit from. And so the Gemara says, Elo Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Zeiri. Rather, Rav Yosef said that Zeiri said, Machlokes she'ein ba kedei chalukah. The machlokes is in a situation where it cannot be divided up. However, Aval yesh ba kedei chalukah, but it's the other way around. If it's a situation where the property can be divided up, so then we're going to be more strict and not rely on breira. Divrei hakol aser. Everybody agrees it's going to be aser. Even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov would be strict in that situation. And of course, that would explain, now that we're saying there's a machlokes in the case of she'ein ba kedei chalukah, there's a machlokes when it can't be divided up. So that can explain the case of the Beis HaKnesses as well. That's like something that's ein ba kedei chalukah, and we did have a shita, now we do have the shita of the Tanna Kama, that it's aser in that situation. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, Halacha Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. The halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov in the Mishnah. We are lenient. V'chein Amar Rabbi Eliezer. And similarly, Rabbi Eliezer says, Halacha Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. The halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Hamudar Hanam Echavero V'yeshelo Sham Merchatz V'chulu. Again, the Mishnah said if you have a situation where somebody can't get benefit from his friend, and the person, he owns a merchatz, but he leases it out, so if he has a tfisas yad, if he has some kind of rights of usage to the merchatz, so then the other person can't use it, because that would be benefiting from the person that he's mudar hana from. And the Gemara says, V'kama tfisas yad. The Gemara says, well, what is considered tfisas yad in that merchatz? What's considered that he really has usage, that he's an owner, that it becomes prohibited? Amar Rav Nachman says, L'mechsa, l'shlish, v'l'reviyah. If he's able to get the proceeds, either half, or a third, or a quarter, that's already considered that he's getting profits, that he's getting usage, and it's considered to be his in terms of the mudar hana. Afal b'batzer lo, but if it's less than that, no. And the Gemara continues, Abaya says, Afilu bebatzer aser. No, even if it's less usage than a half or a third or a quarter, even that is going to be prohibited. And so the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, Hechi dami deshari. If that's the case, in what situation would it be permitted? And the Gemara says, the mekabel betaska. The case where it would be permitted is if he gets a yearly pay. And the Mefarish over here explains, Abaya Amar Afilu Bebotzer. Abaya says, even if it's less, meaning even if he's profiting less than a quarter, Afilu Bebotzer Miravi, even if he gets less than a quarter of the profits, Havit Tfisas Yad, that's still considered Tfisas Yad because he's still getting some of the profits. The idea is, according to Abaya, as long as he's getting any profit, it's considered like he has a Tfisas Yad, the Asr Bahem Hamudar, and therefore the person who's Mudar Hana would be prohibited. And the Mefarish continues, the Mekabel Bataska. According to Abaya, the only time that we're going to say it's considered no usage is if he gets a yearly or an annual fee, but he's not getting any of the profits. Shekiblu hasocher loses mimenu mas b'chol shana v'shana. In other words, the person renting it from him is going to give him a certain amount every single year, a fixed amount, but there's not going to be any of the profits going to the person who's leasing it out. The hailo have a tfisas yad klal. According to Abaya, that's the case where there's no tfisas yad. It's considered no usage. It's considered completely leased out to another person, and the mudar hana would be allowed to go in there because, again, since the person who he's mudar hana from has leased it out and is not even getting any of the profits, it's not really considered his, and it's going to be permitted for the mudar hana to use it. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph.